Let's give some 3 takeaways from the Spurs win over Utah and bring in the doctor. Dr. Ryan McCorkle makes another stop right here on Locked On Spurs to discuss all things injuries and Spurs.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Hot Rod.
And I'm RC from the San Antonio Spurs.
And you're listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Spurs. We're here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Ken's 5 San Antonio. Glad to have y'all back. Hope everybody's having a great day. And we always appreciate you subscribing wherever you can. Pick a platform, YouTube, Ken's 5 Plus app. What else you got? iTunes, Spotify. Yeah, the list goes on and on. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get themselves $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. What are we talking about today? We're going to be looking back at last night's Spurs win over the Utah Jazz on the road. Then bringing our guest, Dr. Ryan McCorkle. He's going to discuss the concussion protocol, basically what happened with Zach Collins recently. And then tackle the question about Wemby's hectic summer schedule. Should Spurs fans be worried about his health, knowing that he has to run through France for the Team France of the Olympics, and then to training camp with them, and then of course the tournament play, and then turn right back around ready for a sophomore season. We're going to get into all that coming up next right here on Locked On Spurs. But first, your Spurs, yes sir, they won on the road out in Salt Lake City, beating Utah 118-111. And that's 2 wins in a row. Can they finally get the third win this Friday versus New York? We will see. Wemby had 19 points and 8 rebounds. Devin Vassell had 31 points in the win. Sohan had 19 and 9 rebounds, and Malachi had 17 points. By the way, Malachi got some praise from Popovich after the game, saying that when the team hit an offensive lull, it was Malachi that came in and gave him an offensive boost. So he gave him credit. Spurs are now 17-56, and as mentioned, the next host, the New York Knicks, Friday night in San Antonio. All right, so what stood out for me? I mean, I think the biggest one right now are the assists. I mean, did you see how many assists the Spurs recorded? 40 assists. That is sharing the ball. That's you guys making shots. So Spurs really shared the wealth last night versus the Jazz. Champagne afterwards spoke with Valley Southwest, saying that they have to do that they have to share. There are no egos on this team, and that showed. I mean, takeaway number one, it's got to be that, right? 40 assists. I don't know how many 30 or more assist nights the Spurs had. They had a string of them, and it looks like that is still going. As a matter of fact, that has been one of the biggest strengths of the Spurs this season, has been assists. They usually, for most of the season, have been ranked top 5, top 10, sometimes number 1 for a minute in assists per game per team. So kudos to them. Takeaway number 2, the Spurs connected on their threes. They shot 49% from the 3 line, 16 for 33. I bring it up is because heading into last night's game, I should say, the Spurs had recorded several games in a row where they were not making more shots from 3 versus their opponent. Spurs hit 16 3-pointers. Utah had 13. You got to make them. Popovich stresses that. Champagne again mentioned that, hey, Popovich, make sure to let the team know if the shot's there to take it. And they definitely took it. So that's key. Look, that's what the modern NBA is about, right? Making threes. And the Spurs did that. That was one of the bigger reasons why the Spurs got the 118-111 win over Utah. And finally, the last takeaway is Devin Vassell. What a game. As mentioned, 31 points in the win for the Spurs. Not only that, he had 6 assists and 4 rebounds, all that in 39 minutes. Kudos to him. He was a big factor. Wemby wasn't really his Wemby self. Didn't really put a monster. He did have 7 blocks, but nevertheless, really the Spurs were leaning on Devin for the offensive punch, and they got that. And I bring it also too is because after he had that stinker versus Phoenix on March 23rd, where the Spurs got just annihilated, he had 2 points in that loss. He followed that up with a second game against Phoenix with 26 points, and now in a 30-plus point outing for Devin. He's making a case that, he should be considered a part of this long-term rebuild playing along Wemby. He was knocking down shots from the mid-range, knocking down threes, getting to the free throw line, really just doing it all for the Spurs to keeping them in the game and at least, keeping Utah at bay. The Spurs nearly were wire-to-wire winners, and Utah had a slim lead early in the game. But yeah, Devin, when Wemby was struggling offensively, it was Devin that came in and really provided the big punch on the offensive end for your Spurs. And a quick shout out to Malachi. He really had a good game with 17 points. Again, he deserves a tip of the cap as well. Those are some takeaways right there from the Spurs win over the Utah Jazz. All right, up next, we have Dr. Ryan McCorkle. We're going to be discussing the injury front for the Spurs, Zach Collins' recent concussion, and then Wemby. What about that big, long, arduous, hectic schedule he's going to have as soon as the Spurs season is over? We're going to be discussing that. That's coming up next. But first, I want to talk to you about Nissan. You're the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further. Ever wonder what adventure could be like just right around the corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. Hey, so what about the Nissan Pathfinder? Yeah, the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room up to 8 in expansive cargo capacity, advanced available 4x4 capability, and with 284 horsepower, up to 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Hey, what about the Nissan Armada? The 2024 Nissan Armada will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger, explore further with the 2024 Armada. You got to get it, man. You want to get those SUVs from Nissan. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada. Go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Hey, I want to talk about Amazon Fire TV. Look, I got it. You should have it too. I actually used it last night when I needed to have multiple screens. So I put the Spurs game on one TV, and then I went straight to my Amazon Fire TV and just fired that up and watched other games. It comes in handy for me when I'm trying to keep up what else is going on in the NBA. It'll come in handy for you. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that'll help you plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes. And as well, free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend of baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA. You want to get yourself a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On. And not to mention the great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV.
This is Emily Swallow, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
And as promised, we are now joined by the good doctor himself, Dr. Ryan McCorkle. Make sure to follow him on X at AustinERDoc and on Instagram, AustinEMDoc. He works out in Austin, Texas. By the way, Doc, I was up there for the Spurs Austin game. Well, the game versus Brooklyn. So at least I went to the game that they won. But he is with the backstage concierge practice, takes care of all the fun stuff out in Austin, the music concerts, everything. And of course, he's with St. David's Medical Center as well. Doctor, appreciate you taking time.
Absolutely. Always good to be with you, Jeff.
By the way, you'll be proud of me. Before your segment, I actually did a 40-minute walk run on the Riverwalk in San Antonio.
Very proud of you, Jeff. That's awesome. Outside, getting your cardio, all the good things.
Yeah. I mean, before we dive into it, a walk run, is that impactful? Just having your heart rate go up and down like that, like kind of a run and then a stop and then a walk and a run and a stop.
Moving your body is always a good thing. Even they've shown the benefits to your heart and cardiovascular system of just walking. But anytime that you can intermittently get your heart rate up even more with running, that's even better for you. But even just people starting with getting out and getting a 30-minute walk in a day, we're people off the couch and moving. That's the first step. We're happy with that. From there, yes, as much as you can push yourself into the high intensity interval training, running for short periods, that's even better for your heart.
I'll take it, Doc. I'll take it. And for all those who are new to Dr. Ryan's visit here at Locked On Spurs, he comes on, he discusses all things San Antonio Spurs, but on the medical side. And also he touches on the world of sports, injuries, whatnot, and gives plenty of good advice for those that are listening, just like right now, why it's important to get out and run and walk. So, Doctor, let's go ahead and dive into it. The first guy we got up on our list is Zach Collins. Now he's back on the court. He's playing. He had a pretty good game recently against Phoenix in place of Wemby, who sat out. Talk about him in a bit. But he recently was on the injury list because of a concussion protocol. I was at the game in Austin where I saw his neck whip back and slam on the court. Got up like a champ. He kind of rubbed his head, but kept on. But the Spurs obviously sat him out for a few games because of the concussion situation. What is that when the player gets a concussion? Why is it important that they sit out for a few games? And what is this we hear about CTE, especially in the NFL world?
So this is a big topic and also a big area of focus in athletics right now because of CTE, where people have continuous trauma to their head and low-level damage to their brain that can have really deleterious long-term effects, severe depression. People have harmed themselves, harmed their family. These were NFL players from the consequences of those repeated concussions. So concussions are when you hit your head, or you don't even have to directly hit your head. Like you said with Zach Collins, the neck snapping back.
Yeah.
We see that a lot in car accidents. You see it a lot in the NFL. Football. It's not just hitting your head, it's the snapping of your neck. You get what's called a coup counter coup injury. Your brain sits in cerebrospinal fluid inside a fixed space, your skull.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that quick movement like that, your brain actually bangs against both inner aspects of your skull, and can do damage that way without actually having to have hit your head. Just that swaying back and forth motion.
Right.
We do things in the ER like CAT scans and MRIs to rule out a specific subset of bleeding in the brain: subdural hematomas, subarachnoid hemorrhage, epidural hematomas. Those are injuries that require neurosurgical intervention from trauma. Mm-hmm. What concussion means is you don't have one of those life-threatening bleeding problems, but you are exhibiting neurologic symptoms after a head injury. Mm-hmm. So being sensitive to light, sound, headaches, confusion, blurred vision, those kind of things are all the symptoms of concussion after a head injury or whiplash injury.
Yeah, when I said I mentioned I was at the game and I saw when Collins fell and he whacked his head on the court. Interesting though, Zach Collins, didn't show any signs immediately. I mean, he rubbed his head, but he kept on. In his situation, at least according to the Spurs, again he was out because of the concussion. Why was he able to continue to play if after the game they realized, oh, you actually suffered a concussion?
Immediately?
Yeah.
Well, so there's concussion protocols in just about every sport now. You do baseline neurocognitive testing preseason, where you go through this battery of tests, things like count backwards from 100 in sevens. 93, 86, 79, and how quick you can do that. And it's measured. And there's several tests like that. And then after you've had the head injury, you go to the sideline and they put you through that test again. And it's compared to your baseline. And if you're impaired to your baseline, they say, okay, you can't go back in. If you're at your baseline, then they'll say, okay, you passed your neurocognitive testing, you can go back. A lot of times when they take NFL players in the tent, to determine concussion, they're running through that battery of neurocognitive tests to see if they're at their baseline.
Yeah.
So you can go back and play maybe if he passed that, but then he may have had some symptoms the day after or that night.
I mentioned, the neck portion. You kind of touched on it too. People think concussion, they think the brain and the head, like you could, I mean, I've had one before, I just remember everything going black. But What about, is there any trauma to the neck or maybe lower back when with the whip point that Zach went through? Because I mean, and if you think about it too, doctor. I mean, I get it. The Moody Center is smaller compared to the Frost Bank Center, but you can hear it. It was audible. You heard the thud, like boom, and I'm watching the play, and I see his neck kind of like arc, like the best way to describe it. What kind of neck trauma could
So
player like Zach or somebody just suffering the symptoms? Basically, what happens to the neck?
Well, so that's where the classic term whiplash comes from.
Okay.
So people that are in that car accident and have that forward back motion and crack their head back. You can do everything from fractures to the actual bones in the spinal column to the more common injury is the severe muscle spasms. Usually takes 24 to 48 hours to start to really reach peak soreness. So right after the accident, they go, "Oh, I'm fine." And the next day they wake up and like, "Oh, I can't move my neck."
Yeah.
That's the classic whiplash injury. You may or may not have any damage to your spinal column, but it's severe pain. Professional athletes, they go through more of that motion on a regular basis, whipping their head around, getting knocked around, that kind of thing. And they have a lot more development of that musculature that protects it more than your average person who's in a car accident. So they don't suffer as much from the whiplash injuries to the neck and back. We do see neck and back problems in basketball players, but not as often, more with the head.
Yeah, that reminds me of a time when recently I went to the gym and I felt stupid afterwards because there was like a bench press, but it was all fancy, high tech looking, and they actually had a head like a neck brace, like you sink your neck in the head, and I stupidly thought, oh, I can do more than I should, and I remember pushing, and I next thing I know, remember my neck just freezing up, and to this day, it's still sore right here. Is those machines that lock you into place good for the neck head area? Because let me tell you, doctor, I don't know what happened. I just strained and it just locked up.
It's one of those things where, especially if you're going to use those kinds of equipment, you want to start with super low weight and work your way up. The design is actually good because if you think about a regular flat bench, and you've seen people do this, where they really arch their back trying to shove up more weight than they can actually move, and they arch their neck at the same time.
Right.
And when you're doing all that at the same time, you can strain your neck, strain your low back.
Yeah.
So that's designed to keep it in place, but it probably means you're going to be able to move less weight because you're isolating those pecs more than usual. So it's a good concept, but again, equipment.
Yeah, let me tell you, doctor, I learned a lesson right away, and I got up and I reduced that weight quickly. So I learned right away. But Zach obviously is fine. He wasn't out too long. Based on how quick he came back, doc. I don't know if in your world, the medical world, there's grades of concussion. It looked like he was able to come back relatively fast, considering he hit his head pretty hard.
And it's more about your symptoms than it is how hard you hit your head. He didn't lose consciousness. Sometimes you don't have to lose consciousness to have a concussion, but that, like you said, when everything went black, when you hit your head, that's common with concussions. But the return to play is all about symptomology. Did he have bad headaches? Was he having blurred vision? Did he pass those neurocognitive tests? Was he having a problem with lights and sounds? If not, then he passes the testing and can go back to playing. Two things with that. Number one, there's been some notorious anecdotal stories about especially hockey players cheating on the neurocognitive tests, and then when they do the testing preseason, they will purposefully sandbag it, not do as well as they could do, so that when they have a concussion during the season, it looks like they're not as impaired as they are, so they can continue playing. We hope that people have learned how bad that is for their long-term health and they don't do that anymore. But this is, objective based on how you did on the baseline at the beginning of the season. The second huge point to make with this is CTE has been proven to be more associated with small repetitive trauma than it is one big thing like Zach Collins falling and hitting his head on the court. It's more kids starting out in Pee-wee football and every week banging tiny little every play over and over and over from the time they're 7 until they're in college or NFL. Those are the people that exhibit more CTE. Is those not getting, I got knocked out, I got not, whatever. It's just those repetitive small traumas.
Absolutely. He is Dr. Ryan McCorkle. Make sure to follow him on X at AustinER. Hey, when we get back, we're going to shift gears to talk about Wemby. He had a left ankle sprain. Doctor will briefly talk about that. He's talked a lot about that on his visits here. But the bigger question is his workload. He's going to have a very busy offseason and then beginning of a new season in his sophomore year. So we'll discuss that. That's next right here on Locked On Spurs. This show episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Look, you want to try online therapy? Give BetterHelp a chance right now. So give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get on your way to being your best self. Sometimes we all need to get an opportunity to get things off our chest, right? Big or small, certain things in life can really start to get to you. So it's important to let that out, especially someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, if you feel about something, either negative or positive, and you want to try online therapy, give BetterHelp a shot. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week over and over and over again. Get it off your mind, get it off your chest. That's where online therapy like BetterHelp can come in. And look, we all know the Spurs are having a bad season. It's probably getting to you, getting under your skin, just frustrated with the thing. You got Wemby and this should be better than the record. But sometimes there are bigger things out in life than sports. It's your job, it's just relationships or whatever is nagging at you, or what you're doing right and you want to keep on doing it right. That's where BetterHelp comes in. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get those things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get yourself 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And we're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Dr. Ryan McCorkle, making another visit here. Follow him on X at AustinER. Just a few minutes, he'll talk about what he is up to in Austin at the emergency room, and of course with backstage concierge medical practice. Dr. Wemby is now in focus now. He's blazing, his path in the NBA so early, doing really well on the court. They upped his minutes. There's no minute restrictions, but a couple things happened recently. Well, one thing happened recently, that is he suffered a left ankle sprain. You've talked about sprains a lot. So briefly for the new listeners, just basically what was that about?
When you stretch the ligaments around the ankle, usually from what we call an inversion injury, just the classic rolling of the ankle where it rolls to the outside. The deltoid ligament's the most common one injured. Depending on the grade of sprain, it can be, from a couple of days to several weeks for those high ankle sprains that involve more of the moving into the upper leg. His obviously was not that. Ankle sprains are extremely common, almost, unavoidable in basketball players. I think it says a lot about that huge stretching routine we talked about in previous episodes for how quick he was able to bounce back from that.
And for those who need to learn more about that, just check out previous episodes of Locked On Spurs with Dr. Ryan McCorkle. He discusses it all, including the ricin, right? There's a new letter on there. Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah, rice in therapy. So he'll talk about that. But let's dive into the big topic, and that is Wemby's busy offseason. As mentioned, his minutes restrictions are lifted. He's playing upwards of 30 minutes a game. But when the season is over, Doc, he has to now join Team France for the Summer Olympics. That means training camp. That means exhibition games. That means a tournament run, and their run for the hopefully gold for them. Oh, and then right as soon as the Summer Olympics are over, he has to rejoin the Spurs for training camp, preseason, and the start of his sophomore season. Should Spurs fans be worried about the heavy workload on a player of his body type beginning as soon as the season is over?
I don't think we need to be as worried about Victor, given his age, being 20 years old. I think it's more important for his development to be able to go through the skill set against NBA competition to develop his game. Anytime, the more time you spend on the court, you just increase the odds of having an injury at some point, of course. But I think having more time, playing against that level of competition, being in the company of both the Spurs and the French national teams, nutritionists, trainers, those kind of things are going to be better for his long-term development than going away, being on your own, to your own, nutritional devices as a 20-year-old, and the things that can happen there. I think you can see a good example of that with Luka Doncic. He's competed with the national team, with his national team, almost every offseason. Done really well with it. He tends to do worse when he's left to his own devices as far as the eating habits go.
Yeah.
So I think it will be good for Victor to be, in that structure, and he's getting more reps again on the world stage, as well as the rest of the NBA season.
Yeah, and I'm sure the Spurs will definitely monitor that as well. They're more than likely, as you mentioned, they'll have representatives on the medical side and staff with him as he progresses with Team France this offseason for the Olympic run. And again, the Spurs, is not like they will not discourage it. They were very encouraging with Manu and Tony to play with Team Argentina and Team France. And, I think there was maybe 1 year with Manu, they were kind of iffy about it because he had been suffering some injuries, but yet he still played. And I guess that's the same for Jeremy Sohan. He recently said that he will be, or he's crossing fingers that he will make. No, I'm pretty sure he will. Team Poland's roster.
I think
the same thing for him too. Just the same thing, just to be around the basketball environment, and as you said, keeping him in shape and mentally focused.
Agreed. And Tim playing for the U.S. team as well.
That's right.
Back in the day, we had three Olympians, so there's plenty of precedent for it. I think there's some concern trolling of anytime that Victor's involved. But I think it'll be good for him in the long run. Yeah.
It's just the workload starting this offseason has a lot of Spurs fans kind of biting their fingernails like, that's the new toy in the toy chest. That's the big prize you want, and you don't want anything to happen to him. Considering the Spurs want to get back to the top, and the last thing they need is see Victor either, suffer some injury, knock on wood, or just be totally drained to start his sophomore season. I suspect too the Spurs will probably lighten his load, probably not play as many preseason games and monitor his minutes to start the season. Because again, there's precedent. We saw this with Tim, Tony, Manu, and even Derek White and Keldon Johnson when they had little runs with Team USA.
Yeah, and I would venture to guess that he won't have to go through the full battery of training with Team France either. It's probably they'll be just fine with him showing up for the games. And
I'm pretty sure. He is Dr. Ryan McCorkle. Make sure to follow him on X at AustinERDoc. In case you wonder why he had a little bit of a light speed round right now, is because you can tell he's at work right now. We got to let him go. But Doctor, quickly tell us what's going on in Austin, from backstage to the St. David's Medical Center. What's all going on there?
So like you said, I'm still working at St. David's Medical Center. I also work at Austin Emergency Center. And then we have the backstage medical business. We just finished South by Southwest. So we had tons of events going on there. Willie Nelson's Luck Reunion out west of town, about 40 minutes in Luck, his little compound. That was amazing. And then we have a ton of shows going on around the venues in the city. So it's been a busy time with South by, and now we're ramping up into big concert season at the Moody Center. And then ACL Festival will be here before you know it. And then I was at the game, the Nuggets game before you were in Brooklyn. I was at the Nuggets game at the Moody Center. So we got a lot going on in Austin.
Sorry about that, Doctor. Saw that destruction there. It was a pleasant game for the Spurs and scoreboard wise. But hey, make sure to follow him on Instagram as well, AustinEMDoc. Why? Because he has a lot of sneakers that he shows off. By the way, Doc, did you like those Keldon Johnson sneakers that I can't pronounce the name of the company, Koinon have released? I thought they were pretty cool.
I can't pronounce it either. Yes, I think one of the first ones you see in the Fiesta colorway. That's super cool. Yeah. I like that. I can't keep up with what I got going on now, so I certainly can't branch out to Chinese brands. I'm a huge Jokic fan, and I like the pink ones he's been wearing. I can't pronounce the name of the Chinese company that he's with now either. And to be honest, they retail for $300, and that's a little salty for my taste. Mm-hmm. For a Chinese sneaker that I'm not familiar with, the long-term quality and fit and that kind of thing. So I'm not ready to that yet, but good for Keldon. Get the bag, and it's cool that he has his own Fiesta colorway.
Absolutely. Again, more reason you got to follow Doctor on social media. We told you how to do that. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow talking all things San Antonio Spurs. Check out Locked On Sports 24/7 streaming channel only on YouTube. Subscribe to it right now. So for Dr. Ryan McCorkle, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.